In 1964, Atlanta was making a name for itself as the capital of the New South and the headquarters for the Civil Rights Movement. The city was attracting attention from the national and international press. Hometown journalists like Celestine Sibley, Calvin Cox, and Hal Gulliver were traveling too and learning about how other cities did things. It was an exciting time, full of change and opportunity. In this environment, the Atlanta Press Club was born. Veteran journalist Bill Shipp recalls being among the club's founders.
But Atlanta went through a very vibrant and very super growth. We are the world's next great city. In fact, that was their motto at one point in the 60s. And everything was go, go, go. Ivan Allen was the former great mayor of Atlanta, the only Southern mayor to testify in favor of the Civil Rights Act. Carl Sanders was the first New South governor, a man who wanted progress and education on his mind. So we thought if we were all these wonderful things, and then several of us had been out, like we'd gone to several rocket launchings, and I'd gone to Houston a couple of times to look things over. Everybody had a press club. I mean, everybody. Even these dawdling little Texas towns like Houston. So we said, if everybody has got to have a press club, we've got to have one.
From its earliest days, the Atlanta Press Club attracted some of the most important newsmakers in the city, state, and nation. The organization was only a year old when civil rights leader Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. took the podium at a press club luncheon to talk about the continuing struggle for racial equality. Zernona Clayton had worked with Dr. King in the early 1960s before becoming a television journalist. She remembers the role she played in desegregating the press club.
One day, my good friend Ralph McGill, who was the editor at that time, the publisher of the Atlanta Constitution, we often went to lunch. And he said, Zernona, let's go to lunch today. I said, okay, where are we going? He said, the press club. I said, oh, I don't think I'm going to be able to join you on this one. We got to the door for the luncheon, and the man on the door said, oh, Mr. McGill, today is for members only. So, you know, your guests can't come in. He said, oh, she's a member. And he pulled out the card. And that was the first time I knew I was a member.
Through the 1960s and 70s, the Atlanta Press Corps grew in size and sophistication, as did the city itself. The press club expanded to include broadcasters. Its public relations membership grew as well. And journalists not only from Atlanta-based publications and stations, but also from national and international news organizations that set up bureaus in the city. Members met regularly to share drinks, gallows, humor, and scoop. Their gatherings took place in smoky bars and restaurants all over town, until ultimately they found a home at Manuel's Tavern. To this day, Manuel's remains a hangout for journalists, politicians, and people who want to rub elbows with both. Press club members had plenty of news to cover. Atlanta was transforming into a business and transportation hub. The city joined the sporting world's big leagues when it welcomed the Braves and the Falcons in 1966. The fight for civil rights moved from the streets to the ballot box. In 1973, 8 years after Congress passed the Voting Rights Act, Atlanta elected its first black mayor, Maynard Jackson. The next year, Hank Aaron hit his 715th home run. In 1976, the nation elected its first Deep South president since the Civil War, former Georgia Governor Jimmy Carter. Sometimes the press was the news, such as when Atlanta Constitution editor and columnist Gene Patterson won a Pulitzer Prize in 1967 for editorials about civil rights, following a trail blazed by his predecessor, Ralph McGill. Or when Zernona Clayton became the first Southern African American to host a daily primetime talk show that very same year. Then there was the 1974 kidnapping of Atlanta Constitution editor Reg Murphy. Murphy was released when the newspaper paid a $700,000 ransom. The kidnapper went to prison. The 1980s marked a turning point for journalism in Atlanta. The decade kicked off with the launch of Ted Turner's newest media brainchild, CNN, the world's first 24-hour news station. Soon, Atlanta was attracting a different kind of media attention as news outlets flocked to the city to cover the trial of Wayne Williams, who was suspected of being behind a shocking string of child murders and disappearances. In one of its numerous First Amendment fights, the Press Club led an effort to get cameras in the courtroom during the trial, with limited success. In 1988, the nation and its press corps came to Atlanta for the Democratic National Convention. And as the decade closed, Atlanta was awaiting news of whether it would welcome the world to the 1996 Olympic Games. The Press Club was nearing a turning point too, and by the mid-1980s, a group of journalists, supported by some in the public relations community, hatched a plan to put the Press Club firmly under the control of journalists. Anita Sharp, then an editor at the Atlanta Business Chronicle, was president of the Press Club. With help from some friends, she ushered through a bylaws change that required a majority of club members to be working journalists and increased dues on members from outside the press. Sharp, Mary Welch, and Rick Gove, also Press Club members at the time, explained how it happened.
They've been going on for years, and we started down that road at either that meeting or the meeting before of what are we going to do? We can't get AJC people to join. We can't get CNN people to join. We can't get the right speakers. And it was sort of like, I was tired of hearing it and felt like we needed to do something. We had Eric Gordon, this fabulous attorney who had a specialty in media law, on the board. Very nice touch, and it was like, okay, we gotta fish or cut bait here. We have got to do something about this. What can we do? And Eric said, let's look at a legal solution.
Yeah, and let's also point out that a lot of public relations folks also supported this.
Oh, of course, like Rick. I mean, well,
yes.
yeah.
You know, but you had Bell South, you had Elizabeth Mosey of the World Congress Center, you had a lot of mostly corporate, frankly, PR folks who had a journalism background who realized something had to happen. And it was in their benefit as well to have a vibrant press club.
The Press Club had solved one problem, but others loomed. That was the situation when then Atlanta Constitution business reporter Maria Saporta held the president's post in the early 1990s.
When I started with the organization, it was really teetering. And I knew the potential, and when I connected with Tom Johnson, and Randy Ziffer was part of that, and he saw the potential, it became this magic, and we made something happen. And just along the way, and that was in the early 90s. Along the way, there have been so many people who have added to that magic.
The Press Club needed several priorities. One, it needed membership, so we all went to work on membership. Second, it needed space, a place for the meetings. And it just so happened that we had a space opening up at CNN, very prime space, that had been occupied by a bank. And at that point, of course, I had the power to do it. And if you have the power, why not use it for good? But beyond office space and beyond members, the Press Club needed money. I mean, we were virtually at close to broke. So with Ted Turner's support, I think we made our first major pledge of $30,000, which was a fairly big pledge for the Press Club at the time.
Through the 1990s and early 2000s, the Press Club regained its footing, but the news outlets and journalists it supported were feeling the first disruptive effects of the internet. Over time, new media and new technologies upended traditional industry practices and business models. They changed the way the press covered everything, from 9/11 terrorist attacks to the Atlanta schools cheating scandal. As the industry shifted, the press club's resources and camaraderie became even more essential to local journalists, and membership grew. Today, it's more robust and active than ever, with a permanent home at the Commerce Club, nearly 600 members, and 2 full-time employees who keep it going day to day. The Press Club's summer internship program offers college students hands-on experience at local media outlets, preparing them to become the next generation of a free press. The Newsmakers series brings notable speakers such as Clarence Thomas, Barbara Walters, Janet Napolitano, and Tom Brokaw to town for standing room only events, strengthening the club's programming and its brand. Long-standing statewide political debates have been boosted by a major endowment, establishing the Loudermilk Young Debate Series. The annual Awards of Excellence recognize the best work of local reporters and photojournalists. And the Press Club's Hall of Fame honors lifetime achievements of exemplary people of the press. 50 years after the Atlanta Press Club's founding, it continues its mission to bring together media professionals to question newsmakers, talk about the craft of journalism, celebrate successes, and consider the future.
It's never been more sort of up in the air about where media will go, or it's also never been more kind of unsettling in terms of what it means to be a journalist. Are all bloggers journalists? Yeah. In some ways you could sort of say that the landscape is a little bit up for grabs. That you have startups, you have upstarts coming in, and just like Politico, and basically owning an entire category that didn't exist 20 years ago. And so it's very exciting, and I think that makes the Press Club even more vital because we're exploring these issues.
One of the things that I really enjoy about being a part of the Press Club is having the opportunity to help aspiring young journalists get the same kind of opportunity that I had as an aspiring journalist. I work well with the intern committee with the Press Club, and basically that's the goal, is to try to get as many talented applicants as we can who are about to graduate college, or they have just graduated college and they're looking for that break to start their journalism career. And that's exactly the kind of help that I got.
We really want people to be members, and especially the millennials right now who don't pick up magazines and don't pick up newspapers. They need to be members, and they need to understand that they're part of a larger conversation, and that even as they do PR and maybe they are only tweeting at reporters or bloggers, they need to understand where it fits into the history of journalism.
I think the most fascinating part about the Press Club is you take a very competitive, you get a whole bunch of people who are not supposed to play well together in the sandbox, and you put us in the same sandbox, and we have found that we can play well together, that we can put our competitive juices aside, and we can say, you know what, let's create something really special for Atlanta and for our profession.
A strong press club helps to make a very strong city, an area, and we're lucky to have that here.